It seems like everybody around the world these days is just completely and utterly okay with hooking up. And it makes sense. This generation is utterly and completely succumbing into instant gratification. Everybody's normalizing the idea of scrolling through social media for hours and hours on end. Eating junk food is completely fine. That's all we have these days. Stressed out maybe? Just play a little bit of video games, you know, or maybe 5 hours of them. Who cares? And that is, I would say, probably the biggest reason why hooking up is completely fine. A lot of these things are getting normalized, and equally so, hooking up is definitely going to be normalized as well. Lust is probably one of humanity's biggest weaknesses. We desire sex and intimacy. We want to be physically active with another person in the world. The issue though is it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time and effort and energy, and you got to make a relationship. Why do all of these things? Why don't I just go outside, hook up with the girl, hook up with the guy, and as simple as that, my desires are catered. I mean, it's pretty simple, right? Literally, hookup is extremely accessible and easy these days. Step 1, go to the club. Step number 2, approach girls, guys, and just start talking, having fun with them.
I'm Brock, and this is exactly the kind of trouble I just love to get into.
And step number 3, well, you bring them home, and then you do it. Simple as that. Now, here's a question I'm gonna ask you. What value does it bring to go left and right hooking up with people? What does it do for you or that other person other than pretty much just masturbating each other at this point? Because normally the beautiful thing about sex and intimacy is that you guys can be vulnerable with each other and build something together. But if all you do is you have this kind of intimacy just to please each other, then I'm sorry to tell you this, but you're wasting your life. Having a hookup is the equivalent of junk food. Yeah, of course, it feels great, but then afterwards, what do you have? You have gained absolutely nothing. And of course, it's easier said than done. I think all of us can understand that hooking up is definitely not productive. But I would like to think that hooking up, it could actually be more detrimental than you might think. The amount of risks you're putting into yourself by just going into a random girl, going into a random guy, and just being absolutely vulnerable to this person. You're putting yourself in an insane amount of risks. The amount of horror stories you must have heard about people getting raped. It's not too uncommon that you can find a guy and they start using your body the way that you might not want it to be used. Or maybe a girl puts you in a very difficult situation and actually starts creating an insane amount of problems just because you've hooked up with her once. The risk to reward ratio is absolutely atrocious. Would you really want to risk your life just going through all of that work and effort just to please yourself? Honestly, you might as well just be consuming porn. Literally, I think pornography might be better than hooking up at this point.
No, I'm not sure about that one. I don't know if that checks out.
Because at least it removes the risks and you're not wasting that much time. But I will say this, no, that does not mean that you should be consuming this at all. They're both atrocious things to do, but I'm just saying there's a lot of reasons you should not be hooking up. I'll say this also, we are humans, right? And of course, sex and intimacy is like the peak of our pleasure. Now, let's say imagine you hook up with, I don't know, 50 guys or girls, and then you finally decide, let's settle, let's get married, and you partner up with the one. You know what's unfortunate about all this? Is that if you be with somebody that has done it so many times, or you have done it so many times, what is it to look forward to?
Yes, sir!
Like, how beautiful does it look? Like, to me, I think it's extraordinarily beautiful when two couples meet. They've never really experienced these sort of things, and they actually tried their best to try to figure themselves out, try to figure how they work, but also try to figure how the other gender works as well. And it's so beautiful to try to like escalate slowly and slowly with this person. It keeps life very exciting. And you want to do this with the one, preferably. You want to do this with the person that you really want to connect with as much as possible. Now, I'm not saying that, of course, like if you're going to be doing it with somebody, it's going to be the guarantee. Like obviously there's many instances where you think this is the one, but it doesn't end up being the one. But at least when you're doing these sort of actions, you want to make sure that you're doing it with the right person. You want to make sure that, okay, there's something to look forward to after showing all my vulnerability, my body, myself to this person. The way I see hooking up, or friends with benefits, or whatever in that sort of range, is that you're basically just building a home and you're just thinking about the design, how it's gonna look like. Oh, it sounds really exciting, but then you don't build a home. What's the point? The relationship part is actually when you actually build a home. You build something productive, valuable, that is actually worth it for the both of you. Additionally, hooking up literally destroys friendships. How are you able to be friends or to connect with this person, to network with this person, when you've just used her in such a way and then just left? I'm gonna tell you this, 95% of the time, every time you cross that boundary, it becomes extraordinarily awkward to maintain this friendship. Because you have just exposed yourselves this way, and now suddenly you guys stop. It's going to be very difficult for you guys not to think of this. And eventually you get to maybe a relationship, you'll maybe settle. And how do you think your wife or husband is going to be comfortable for you to be friends with somebody that you had this kind of vulnerability? You see the complication it creates? I think the majority of the time, the network, the connection that you have between opposite genders, I think it's a lot more valuable than just the sex itself. That intimacy, without really having a base relationship, just provides intimacy. And a lot of people think that you have to be like religious or something like that. And I can already hear it already, like, oh my god, what is these stupid like reasons? Oh, I'm not Muslim, I'm not Christian, I'm not religious. Who cares? Who cares about life? I might as well enjoy it. Sure. You might as well have that instant gratification mindset, but honestly, we both know that this isn't leading anywhere. And just for a little known fact, there's a good reason why religion prevents us from doing fornication like this. It's preventing us from wasting time. It's preventing us from actually spending hours of our emotions, our time, our energy to somebody that is actually utterly meaningless because of lust. Lust is controlling you. You are supposed to actually have your own life settled. You're supposed to control yourself, but instead you're letting your dick or your vagina leading you. But now the question is, how do I make sure that I avoid being in these scenarios? And I'm gonna tell you this right now, it's really crucial for you to be surrounded with good people. So if you have friends of the opposite gender, you should make sure that you hang out with people that are mentally strong and have their life together. If you hang out with girls that all they do, they go to clubs and they go to parties and they have sex with guys left and right, what do you think you're gonna end up doing? Well, of course you're gonna end up doing the same thing as her. That's natural, that's normal, like, of course. But if you hang out with good people, respectful people that actually understand their value, then it's going to be very difficult for you to actually succumb to this desire. Because now, it doesn't just take you to be weak, it takes the other person as well. Me personally, I cannot be friends with a girl that's promiscuous. I'm sorry, but I really cannot.
She belongs to the streets.
Because I know eventually all it takes for me is to hang out with her, maybe one-to-one, or maybe text her a little bit, and then something gets a little flirty, and then from there on it leads to something that I do not want. And a lot of people might be in a position where they want to hook up not necessarily because of the desire, but because of the attention. They basically want to see how desired they are in the sexual market. Like, do people actually want them in bed or not? And let me just tell you right now, that is not the right kind of attention. Of course, it might seem pretty desirable to see a bunch of guys or girls coming to you and seeking that desire from you. There's some form of validation that comes from it that feels good at the moment, but then afterwards, why do you want that kind of attention? Why do you just want your body to have the attention? Don't you want to be loved for who you are? Because that's ultimately what we want, right? But of course, lust gives us a different idea. If you lack that attention, get good people around your life. Trust me. If you have great people that love you for who you are, trust me, the last thing that comes to mind is hooking up. And of course, if you want to feel that kind of desire from the other gender, that's completely fine. Of course, we are humans. We want that kind of desire. We want that attention from females or males. We want that. And I'd say the best way for you to feel that kind of validation and attention from the other gender is just to actually connect with them. Actually talk with them. Talk to them like a human being. Just talk about random stuff that's going on in your life, your mind, or whatever. Because eventually we want a relationship, right? We want to be in a world where we can have someone else in our life we can share everything with. And in order to achieve that, I'd say you're better off actually connecting with the other gender than just hooking up with them. And eventually, you're gonna find the one, and that's when you're actually going to connect so well that you guys show that kind of vulnerability to each other. And if you're in a position right now where you're really thinking about hooking up, I'm gonna tell you one big advice, just like I said in my porn video: keep yourself busy. Seriously, keep yourself busy. If you're never keeping yourself busy with actual meaningful and productive work or doing hobbies that you love, you're gonna succumb to pornography or hookup. So please, don't succumb to these desires. Love yourself. Give yourself what you actually need. And eventually, you will find the one that you can give proper intimacy and love to. So yeah, stay out of trouble. And remember, keep your life exciting.